These stories aren't just urban legends. They happen to real people. Some never camped again. Others refused to speak about what they encountered. So the next time you go camping, remember, you might not be as alone as you think. The woods have secrets, and sometimes they call out to you. These tales serve as a haunting reminder that the boundaries between the known and the unknown are often thinner than we realize. Whether it's the echo of forgotten histories, the presence of lost souls seeking peace, or the whispers of the forest, these experiences have left an indelible mark on those who lived them. They compel us to consider the unseen forces that might linger just beyond our perception and challenge us to respect the mysteries of the natural world. Each story underscores the importance of listening to the land, to the past, and to the quiet voices that sometimes reach out to us in the stillness of the night. So, the next time you venture into the wilderness, approach with an open heart and mind. Embrace the unknown with respect and curiosity, for you never know what stories you might uncover or what spirits you might help find rest. Share your experiences and keep the tales alive, for they are a vital part of our shared history, connecting us to the land and each other in ways we may not yet fully understand. Camping, the promise of peaceful nights under a starry sky, far from the chaos of the city. But what if I told you that for some, this experience has become a never-ending nightmare? Imagine being surrounded by the darkness of the forest, hearing footsteps where there shouldn't be anyone, feeling that something or someone is watching you. These are real stories, told by people who have never gone camping again. Do you dare to listen to the end? Mike and his friends planned a weekend getaway deep in a remote national park. They set up camp near a secluded lake, unaware that locals avoided this place for a reason. That night, as they sat by the fire, they heard something strange. A voice calling from the trees. It wasn't a scream or an animal. It was a whisper, almost mimicking their own voices. "Help me," it said, over and over again. But when they shined their flashlights into the trees, there was nothing there. As the night wore on, the whispers grew louder, now circling their campsite. Panic set in when one of them, Jake, froze in terror. "I see it," he whispered. His face turned pale as he pointed into the darkness, but no one else could see what he was looking at. The next morning, Jake refused to speak about what he had seen. He packed his things and left, and to this day he won't tell anyone what was waiting in those woods that night. Months had passed since that terrifying night in the park, but the memory of the incident still haunted Mike and his friends. They met frequently to try to piece together what had happened, but without Jake's account, everything remained a mystery. It was at one of these meetings that Mike made a bold suggestion. "Why don't we go back there? Maybe we can find some answers." Reluctant but curious, they agreed to return to the park. This time, they were more prepared, bringing powerful flashlights, cameras, and an audio recorder, in the hope of capturing any evidence of what had happened that fateful night. When they arrived at the campsite, everything looked the same, but there was a tension in the air that they couldn't ignore. As night fell, they sat around the fire listening for any strange sounds. Time passed slowly, and just as they were about to give up, the voice came again, clearer than before. "Help me." Everyone froze, fear visible on their faces. Determined to discover the source, Mike activated the audio recorder, trying to capture the mysterious voice. Suddenly, a shadowy figure emerged from the trees, indistinct but clearly present. The figure seemed to float, shrouded in a cloak of mist. With renewed courage, one of the friends, Lisa, began to speak to the figure. "Who are you? What do you want from us?" The figure remained silent for a moment, before finally answering. "I am the remnants of a forgotten history, an echo of times gone by. I need peace." As the figure spoke, the voices in the forest quieted, and a deep silence fell over the room. Feeling empathy, Lisa asked, "How can we help you find peace?" The figure pointed to a specific spot in the woods, where they later found an old, poorly marked grave. Respectfully, they cleaned the area around the grave and built a small memorial with stones and flowers. That night, the voices stopped, and the park seemed quieter than ever. Upon returning home, the friends felt an inner peace, knowing that they had helped solve an ancient mystery. Jake, upon learning what had happened, finally shared what he had seen that night, the same figure lost and crying out for help. Reunited, they reflected on the power of untold stories and the secrets that nature can hold. Mike, Lisa, and their friends had returned to their normal lives, but the experience in the woods lingered in their minds, leaving them both haunted and intrigued. They were proud of having brought peace to the restless spirit, but their curiosity about the woods and its secrets only deepened. A few weeks later, Mike received an unexpected call from Jake. "I think there's more to the story," Jake said, his voice tinged with urgency. "I found an old diary in my attic. It belonged to my grandfather, who used to work near that park. You need to see it." Intrigued, Mike gathered the group, and they met at Jake's house. The diary was worn and yellowed with age, its pages filled with detailed accounts of strange occurrences in the park. According to Jake's grandfather, the area had once been home to a small settlement that mysteriously vanished, leaving behind only whispers and shadows. The locals had called it the Whispering Woods. As they read through the diary, one entry caught their attention. It described a night much like theirs, with whispers in the trees and a sense of being watched. The entry detailed an encounter with a shadowy figure, much like the one they had seen who had asked for peace, just as it had with them. The group realized that the spirit they encountered might not be the only one lingering in the woods. The diary suggested that the settlement's disappearance was linked to a tragic event, a betrayal that had bound the spirits to the land, unable to move on. Determined to uncover the full story, they decided to return to the woods one last time. Armed with the diary's clues, they hoped to find evidence of the lost settlement and perhaps understand the root of the whispers. Upon reaching the park, they followed a path outlined in the diary, leading them deeper into the forest than ever before. As they ventured further, the air grew colder, and a fog began to roll in, shrouding the trees in a ghostly mist. Suddenly, they stumbled upon the remnants of old stone foundations, overgrown with moss and vines. It was all that remained of the settlement. Among the ruins, they found a weathered plaque, half buried beneath the earth. With great care, they uncovered it, revealing an inscription that told of a community torn apart by greed and jealousy. As they stood in silence, the whispers began anew, but this time they were different, softer, as if grateful. The group realized that by acknowledging the past and uncovering its secrets, they had helped to heal old wounds. Feeling a sense of closure, they returned to the campsite, where the forest seemed to embrace them with a newfound warmth. The shadows felt less menacing, and the whispers, now gentle, seemed to bid them farewell. Back in town, the friends shared their story, ensuring that the history of the Whispering Woods and its lost settlement would not be forgotten. They had learned that sometimes the past reaches out to the present, seeking resolution and peace. And by listening, they had become part of a tale that would echo through the woods for generations to come. Lena and her boyfriend Eric had been hiking for hours when they finally reached an old campground near the edge of a dense forest. It was completely abandoned, yet they had the eerie feeling they weren't alone. As they settled in for the night, they saw something or someone standing at the tree line just beyond the firelight. A man, perfectly still, staring at them. He never blinked. He never moved. Eric called out, but there was no response. They assumed he was just some lost hiker, until Lena checked again minutes later and he was closer. Step by step, without a sound, he had moved toward them. Fear took over. They grabbed their things and ran, stumbling through the darkness. But as they reached the trailhead, Lena turned back one last time. The man was standing right where they had been just seconds ago. Still, watching, and still, never blinking. Days after the incident at the camp, Lena and Eric could not forget the piercing gaze of the man who never blinked. Their nights were filled with nightmares, and the feeling of being watched persisted, even far from the forest. Determined to understand what they had experienced, they began researching the area where it all happened. During their investigation, Lena and Eric came across old reports of disappearances in the forest, all involving sightings of a mysterious man. The most intriguing was a story dating back decades about a forest ranger who had disappeared while patrolling the area. He was said to be a serious man, dedicated to his work, and that his absence had left a void in the local community. Determined to find out more, Lena and Eric decided to return to the forest, this time taking with them a local historian who was well versed in the legends of the region. Equipped with cameras and powerful flashlights, they hoped to capture some evidence of the strange phenomenon. Upon arriving at the site, the trio set up a small camp near the tree where they had first seen the man. The atmosphere was tense, but they were ready to face the unknown. As the night wore on, the same eerie silence fell over the forest. Then, as before, the man appeared in the tree line. This time, instead of running away, Lena and Eric, encouraged by the historian, decided to try to communicate. "Who are you?" Lena called out, her voice echoing in the still night. To her surprise, the man finally answered, his voice low and distant. "I'm lost, trapped between worlds." The historian, recognizing the story of the missing ranger, asked, "Are you the ranger?" The man nodded slowly. "I can't find my way back," he murmured, his eyes finally blinking, as if revealing a glimmer of lost humanity. Moved by the ordeal, Lena, Eric, and the historian performed a small farewell ritual, lighting a candle and offering a prayer for the guard's soul. As they did so, the man slowly disappeared, like a mirage finally finding rest. In that moment, the forest seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, and the feeling of being watched dissipated, leaving behind a peaceful silence. Lena and Eric knew they had helped ease a troubled spirit, allowing him to finally rest in peace. Back in town, they shared their experience, and the historian recorded the story so that the guard's legacy would never be forgotten. Lena and Eric learned that sometimes facing fear and seeking understanding can bring peace, not only to those who have passed, but also to those who are still here. The days following their encounter brought a sense of relief and closure for Lena and Eric. They felt as if a weight had been lifted from their shoulders, knowing they had helped a lost soul find peace. However, the experience also left them with a thirst for understanding the mysterious and unexplained occurrences in the area. Their story gained attention in the local community, sparking interest in the history and legends surrounding the forest. Lena and Eric were invited to share their account at a local gathering, where residents exchanged stories of their own strange encounters and eerie experiences within the woods. During the meeting, an elderly woman approached them with a knowing smile. She introduced herself as the granddaughter of the forest ranger who had vanished years ago. With tears in her eyes, she expressed her gratitude to Lena and Eric for helping her grandfather finally rest. She shared with them her childhood memories of the ranger, describing him as a kind and loving man, dedicated to protecting the forest. Inspired by the connection they had made and the stories they heard, Lena and Eric decided to delve deeper into the history of the forest. They discovered that the area was rich with folklore, tales of spirits, and accounts of unexplained phenomena that had been passed down through generations. Intrigued by the potential to uncover more secrets, Lena and Eric, along with the local historian, planned a series of excursions into the forest. Their goal was to document and preserve the stories of the past, ensuring that the history and legends would not be forgotten. As they ventured deeper into the woods, they encountered more remnants of the past: abandoned cabins, forgotten trails, and signs of a once thriving community. Each discovery added a new piece to the puzzle, painting a picture of a place where the lines between the natural and the supernatural often blurred. Their explorations not only deepened their understanding of the forest, but also strengthened their bond with the community. They became part of a collective effort to cherish and honor the history of the land, bridging the gap between the past and present. Though they never encountered the man who never blinked again, Lena and Eric felt his presence in their hearts, a reminder of the power of compassion and the importance of listening to the whispers of history. Their journey had taught them that sometimes the most profound discoveries are found not in the answers, but in the questions that lead us to explore the unknown. Kyle had been camping alone for years. He knew the woods. He wasn't afraid of the dark. But one night, deep in the mountains, he woke up to a sound he couldn't explain, a faint scratching against the fabric of his tent. He stayed perfectly still, heart pounding as the scratching turned into a dragging sound, circling him over and over. Then, silence. Morning came, and as he unzipped the tent, his stomach dropped. There, on the outside of the tent fabric, was a handprint, smudged, too large, and with fingers that seemed too long. He had camped miles away from any other humans, but something had found him in the night. Something that had been just inches away from him as he slept. Despite his unease, Kyle tried to rationalize the handprint. Perhaps it was an animal, he thought, though deep down he knew it was unlikely. Determined not to let fear ruin his trip, he decided to stay another night, but this time he would be more vigilant. As dusk fell, Kyle fortified his campsite. He set up makeshift alarms using empty cans and string, hoping any disturbance would alert him. He sat by the fire, the crackling flames offering a sense of comfort against the encroaching darkness. Hours passed, and Kyle found himself drifting to sleep, the exhaustion of the day finally catching up to him. Just as his eyes began to close, he heard it again, the scratching, faint at first, then growing louder, as if whatever it was had returned, more curious than before. Kyle's heart raced, but he remained silent, straining to hear any movement around the tent. Then, a low whisper pierced the silence. Kyle. It was his name, spoken in a voice that was both foreign and familiar, an unsettling echo that seemed to come from all directions. His mind raced. How could anyone know his name out here? Panic rising, he grabbed his flashlight and burst out of the tent, the beam cutting through the night. The forest was eerily still, the only sound his own ragged breathing. Desperate for answers, Kyle searched the perimeter of his campsite. He found nothing. No footprints, no sign of life. But when he returned to his tent, his stomach dropped again. Another handprint, larger than the last, marked the tent. Realizing he was being watched, Kyle decided he couldn't stay another night. He packed his gear hastily, the weight of unseen eyes pressing down on him. As he began his trek back to civilization, the whispers followed, growing fainter with each step away from the camp. Back in town, Kyle recounted his experience to a few locals, hoping to find some logical explanation. But what he discovered was a tale older than the forest itself. Stories of a wanderer, a lost soul forever searching, known to mark those who ventured too deep into the woods. Kyle never camped in those mountains again. Yet, the mystery of that night lingered, a haunting reminder of the boundaries between the known and the unknown, and the whispers that sometimes slip through the veil. Kyle's encounter in the mountains left him both unsettled and intrigued. Though he vowed never to return, the mystery of the handprint haunted his thoughts day and night. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story, and his curiosity grew stronger with each passing day. Determined to uncover the truth, Kyle began researching the history of the region. He scoured local archives and spoke with historians, delving into old maps and tales passed down through generations. His search revealed a legend about a hermit who had once lived in those mountains, a man who vanished without a trace. Locals believed his restless spirit wandered the woods, marking those who dared to venture too far. Armed with this knowledge, Kyle decided to confront his fears and return to the mountains. This time, he wouldn't be alone. He enlisted the help of his friend, Sarah, who shared his fascination with the supernatural. Together they planned a return trip, hoping to gather evidence and perhaps communicate with the presence that had disturbed his campsite. As they set up camp in the same spot, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Kyle and Sarah prepared. Their equipment, cameras, motion sensors, and audio recorders, determined to capture any evidence of the mysterious entity. Night fell, and the forest enveloped them in its eerie silence. They sat by the fire, discussing the legend and what they hoped to find. As the firelight flickered, they heard it, the familiar scratching sound circling the tent. Keeping their composure, they activated their equipment, capturing every rustle and whisper. The air felt charged with energy, and suddenly the whispering began again, this time clearer. "Help me find peace." Startled but not afraid, Sarah spoke softly into the darkness. "Who are you? How can we help you?" The whispers continued, revealing a story of isolation and longing. The hermit had been a recluse, shunned by society, his spirit unable to find rest after his disappearance. He sought acknowledgement, forgiveness for the past, and a connection to the living world. Moved by the tale, Kyle and Sarah decided to honor the hermit's memory. They created a simple memorial, placing stones and flowers near the site where they camped. As they did so, the forest seemed to sigh, the tension lifting as if acknowledging their gesture. The whispers faded, leaving behind a profound silence. Kyle and Sarah knew they had helped bring closure to a restless soul, bridging the gap between past and present. As they packed up their gear and prepared to leave, the forest felt different, welcoming, almost protective. They left with a sense of fulfillment, knowing they had honored a forgotten life. Back home, Kyle and Sarah shared their experience, contributing to the local lore. Their story became a reminder of the mysteries that lie beyond the visible world, and the power of compassion to heal old wounds. Though Kyle never camped in those mountains again, the experience left him with a newfound respect for the unknown, a reminder of the delicate balance between the natural and the supernatural, and the whispers that sometimes reach out from the shadows.